Chen Ping'an saw the girl in Xianxia again. She was silently following behind a middle-aged man, lowering her head and eating an egg cake with scallion oil. The man had a loveless look on his face. After seeing Chen Ping'an, the man stopped and asked, "Are you the guy I drove away last time?" The man was knocked heavily on his back and hit the wall of the girl in blue. When he looked up, he looked blankly. Suddenly, she saw Chen Ping'an. She just wanted to laugh, suddenly turned her back to Chen Ping'an, and the girl hurriedly wiped the corners of her mouth. Chen Ping'an held back his smile and nodded to the man. "Hello, Master Ruan. It seems that the girl is mostly Master Ruan's daughter. But father and daughter look really different, and fortunately they don't." The man called Master Ruan by Chen Ping'an was the blacksmith who moved to the side stream not long after he arrived in the town. He continued to ask, "Why hasn't Liu Xiaoyan gone to Fujian these 2 days?" Chen Ping'an just wanted to help Liu Xiaoyan explain. The man said coldly, "Tell the boy that if you can't see his uncle again today, you won't have to go to my shop tomorrow." Chen Ping'an hurriedly said, "Master Ruan, there is something urgent in his family. Double quotes. The man interrupted the boy and said, "That's his business. It's none of my business." Chen Ping'an was no good at words. He was stunned on the spot. His face flushed with anxiety, and he didn't know how to speak, for fear of helping himself. Master Ruan's upright temper is something he has personally experienced. The girl in Xinyi tried to say something good for Chen Ping'an. As a result, the man who knew her daughter, Meru's father, told her in advance, "Eat your cake." The wrong girl suddenly quickened her pace and stepped on the man's instep. Then the wind blew under her feet and disappeared in an instant. The man sighed, put Chen Ping'an aside and went on. With a sigh, Chen Ping'an ran to the breakfast shop, bought a cage of 6 steamed stuffed buns, and rushed to the Mud Bottle Lane door. When he arrived at his house, he saw Liu Xiaoyan squatting on the wall, half of his body leaning towards the yacht of Song Jixin's family, eavesdropping very attentively. Chen Ping'an sometimes feels that Liu Xiaoyan really deserves a beating. He had to remind, "I saw Master Ruan just now. I asked you to go to the blacksmith shop to help today. I also said that if I couldn't see you today, I'd dismiss you." Liu Xiaoyan was absent-minded and said, "What's the hurry? It's hard to find an apprentice like me, who is both agile and hard-working. It's hard to find him with lanterns. Master Ruan is just cruel. It doesn't matter to go again tomorrow." Chen Ping'an shook his head and said, "I'm sure Master Ruan is definitely no kidding." Liu Xiaoyan said irritably, "I'll go later. Don't delay me to do my business." Chen Ping'an sent breakfast to the girl in black and took 3 directly to Liu Xiaoyan. He only beat 1. Liu Xiaoyan solved all the meat bags in 2 and 3 times, wiping his mouth and whispering, "Just now, a guest from Song Jixin's family came. If I'm not mistaken, it should be the current governor of the official kill. When he went to our dragon kill in his official clothes, Old Man Yao didn't let you show up for a long time. I'm different. Old Man Yao asked me to show him what it means jump knife," Chen Ping'an said with a smile. "The new supervisor takes better care of Song Jixin. It's something everyone in the town knows." "What are you doing here?" Liu Xiaoyan said anxiously. "Song Jixin, a little white face, can't compete with me. But if Ji Gui likes this dignified official, I don't have a good chance of winning. At that time, your future sister-in-law will run away with others. What shall I do?" "What shall you do?" Chen Ping'an walked directly back to the house. Liu Xiaoyan was left to squat on the wall and feel sorry for himself. The girl in black sat at the table with a straight waist and a knife handle in one hand. Sweat oozed from her forehead. This is the first time Chen Ping'an has seen the girl look like this. Although her body is tight and alert, her eyes are bright and eager to try. Chen Ping'an returned to the threshold. She asked, "Do you know the identity of the guest next door?" Chen Ping'an replied. Liu Xiaoyan said he was the current till supervisor of our town. He was very kind. He made way for me just now at the corner of the alley. The girl sneered. This kind of talent is terrible. Chen Ping'an was puzzled. She asked, "When people walk by the roadside and see ants, will they step on them?" Chen Ping'an thought for a moment and replied, "Gukun certainly will. He often takes water to water the ant nest, or blocks the way out of the ant nest with stones. Liu Xiaoyan is expected to do the same when he is in a bad mood. The girl in black was speechless. Chen Ping'an grinned. I understand what missing means. Is it true or false? She said in surprise. Chen Ping'an nodded. I think you have two meanings, miss. The first meaning is that the people in our town are ants crawling around under their feet in the eyes of you foreigners. The second meaning is that there are high and low among outsiders. For Nanhua and Xianxia and the young children like Gu Ken, they will feel it interesting or inconvenient to master the life and death of ants. But they come to our mud bottle lane, the official master is different. His words and deeds will accord with his identity. So he looks very polite. Listening, right? The girl asked. How did you figure it out? The boy replied jokingly. After picking up a life, it seems that his brain is more intelligent. The girl in black asked solemnly. What did you see before you died? I didn't see anything. Chen Ping'an had some doubts, but still answered honestly. In fact, I didn't think much about it from beginning to end in that alley. Miss Ning asked for Nanhua and Xianxia better. They might see something. She hummed coldly. Yo, what a big breath. With these words, she stared at the straw sandal boy for no reason. Chen Ping'an was flustered. What's the matter? The girl frowned, a little annoyed, and said to herself in her hometown dialect, my family is sword learning. Whether it's the mental method of sword formula or the method used to quench the body and soul, is a unique secret. I haven't learned it all. How dare I teach others? Moreover, I haven't learned those superficial things in the world elsewhere. Otherwise, I can show him a clear way, even if it's just used to strengthen the body and prolong life. Now let me go to find the most threshold low-entry secret scripts. The girl's eyes brightened. Robbery? No. It's no robbery. It's looking for someone to borrow a secret script. You can borrow it and return it. Unfortunately, she soon looked gloomy and said, Damn old eunuch. Wait for me and see if I don't lift your palace to the sky. With a sad face, she said, Can I really only find a sword maker surnamed Ruin? I can make do with cutting people. My mother's 4 or 5 points are true, but I'm really no good at asking people. The straw sandal boy sat on the threshold and looked at the girl named Yang. She told to herself, and her face changed like a cloud in the sky. The handsome man in white robe and jade belt stood in Song Jixin's room, looked around and frowned slightly. His surname Song has arranged such a poor place for you. Song Jixin pursed his lips and didn't speak. The maid Gui had already learned how to hide in her side house. According to the most popular saying in the town, the former supervisor, Lord Song, was no proficient in his business and failed to produce royal tribute porcelain to the satisfaction of the imperial court. With that hard work, he left the corridor bridge and returned to Beijing to work. Of course, he also left Song Jixin, an illegitimate son. He'd only bought him a personal servant girl to take care of his daily life, and then supporting the orphan to a good friend. That is, the new supervisor who replaces him. It is said that his surname is also Song. However, the truth is not clear to the onlookers. Song Jixin didn't know what the relationship between this guy and the man surnamed Song was. His colleagues in the officialdom, his classmates and friends who studied in the past, were his opponents of other mountain factions in the temple in the capital. Before Song left, he mentioned a few words, saying that after the new supervisor arrived in the town, he would soon take their master and servant to leave the town and rush to Beijing Chang. To the adults, asked Song Jixin to be extremely respectful and not to be slighted. Song Jixin didn't like the domineering man in Beijing at all. Probably because he hated the house, and Ukraine thought he was confident in his maidservant Jigui's side, and his leisurely departure from his hometown was only due to the boy's self-esteem. The man smiled and said, Well, the South scholar's surname Song has always been a cautious character. Unlike the old man, he seems to be a woman. Otherwise he won't come here to look after you. Song Jixin's eyebrows were gloomy. The man glanced carelessly at the boy's large box for storing goods, turned his mouth and looked dismissive, and said slowly, Before I came here, I had seen Fu Nanhua from Laolongking. He's really unlucky. His heart will almost break here. Your business with him will continue as usual. You're considered about your losses and profits. I won't get involved in such junk as sesame and mung bean. However, before you leave, you must go to the corridor bridge with me and knock a few heads. After that, there's nothing for you. Come home with me and do what you should do. Sit in your seat and do your part. It's that simple. Do you understand? Of course I understand. Lord Song's words are not obscure. The young man sneered. It's just why. The man smiled, turned and looked at the boy for the first time, and asked. The CC surname Song said you have excellent talent. This evaluation is really not afraid to flash your tongue. You might as well guess what I think. If you look closely, you will find that there are some similarities in shape and spirit between them. Song Jigson was even more angry. But he always held back. The man stopped showing off and playing with the taste. Why? Of course. Because Ben Wong is a big unlucky seedling with the name of heaven. He will be your boy's own uncle. Song Jigson's heart was short and his face was slightly white. The white-robed man turned a blind eye to this, held the jade belt with both hands, looked at the sky outside the window, smiled and said, "It is also because I am the first person in the martial arts of the Dolly King." In fact, this sentence is changed into another statement, which is even more frightening. However, men prefer to be chicken heads rather than phoenix tails. They feel that as long as they live behind people, even after only 1 or 2 people, they are not worth promoting at all. The man thought of the Confucian sage sitting here, and his mouth was full of contempt with a cold hum. He was thinking, if I were not in this world, I could kill you. Che Jingchen and other 3 culture models with one hand. In the cottage of the school, Mr. Dao J is listening to the sound of the children's books. Sit square. In the true sense, Song Jigson and Zhao Yao, the seeds of reading books, are also difficult to appreciate its essence. Confucianism has a classic of founding a religion called Dali. Among them, the chapter on self-cultivation specifically says that a gentleman should sit like a corpse, because the corpse is a divine image and the sitting posture is like a corpse. It is conceivable that it is solemn and solemn. At this moment, Che Jingchen seemed to hear the meditation in the heart of the man in white robe. The clouds were light and the wind was light. He smiled and said, "It's great that the Wufu is in charge of the country. However, the white dragon and fish suit is not a good omen." Footsteps came from the door of Song Jigson's house. Liu Xianxia just wanted to jump off the wall, but he didn't see him. He heard his voice first. Someone smiled and asked, "Are you the disciple of old man Yao at the mouth of Baxi Kill?" His surname is Liu. It was the kill supervisor in white with a jade belt around his waist. He strode out of the threshold and looked at the wall with a smiling face. Liu Xianxia then became stiff and found that he didn't have the strength to jump off the wall. He said with a guilty smile, "If you go back to adults, it was me. When adults went to our dragon kill to open the kill, Shifu asked me to show adults several kinds of work." The man nodded, looked at the tall young man, and asked, "Young man, do you want to go outside, for example, join the army and fight? I promise you can become a senior official as long as you can endure for 10 years. How about I give you a drink in the capital?" Song Jigson, standing behind the man, looked as gloomy as water and clenched the old dragon Buyu jade pendant presented by Fu Nanhua, the book reader, who has held the titles of illegitimate son and wild seed for many years. Now knows the real identity of the men around him, so the youth can better understand the weight of the words said by the man. The words put one in person will be the most powerful talisman of Dolly and the longest Qingyun letter in officialdom. Liu Xianxia racked his brains to come up with some sour words and stammered, "Thank you for your love and fear, but I have promised to be an apprentice in Master Ruan's blacksmith shop. It's really hard to repent. I hope you don't single quotes you don't care. What the tall boy wanted to say suddenly got stuck in his throat. He couldn't remember life or death. He was so anxious that his face turned red. Song Jigson seemed to be considerate and reminded, "Adults don't remember villains." The white-robed man left it off and said, "It doesn't matter. When you get out of the town one day, you can go to the nearest Danyang mountain pass and find a martial artist named Liu Lingxi. Song Chenjing recommended you to join the army. If he doesn't believe it, Tell him that Song Changjing said that Liu Lingxi still owes him 30,000 Shuai dynasty riding heads. Liu Xiaonyang nodded. Okay. The man smiled and left. Song Jixin wanted to stop when he sent her to the gate of the hospital. The man seemed to be dead. He didn't turn his head and said directly, "Follow me to the governor's office and I'll show you a person." Song Jixin rooted his feet like nails on the ground and said with a black face, "I won't go. The place with a high threshold for the people of the town is a dragon's pool and a tiger's den for the teenagers who grow up year by year listening to gossip. The men who always act vigorously outside do not annoy the youth's ignorance of the times or stop, but slow down a lot. Feel a reconcilable hatred of the emperor's son. Who is the emperor of the imperial court? Has you seen the Shuai dynasty prince of Shenangang? Do you know that the Shuai dynasty Gashai and the Songli are enemies of the common enemy, who are also the same old emperor? He is also a prince. He dares to come to this small town in the hinterland of the enemy country, and you collect the salary in Song dynasty. Also the prince, but dare not go to the home of the territory, as small official residence." Song Jixin didn't chew the meaning of these words for the first time, but turned his head and looked at Liu Xiaonyang. He saw a tall boy sitting on the wall, rubbing his hands and knocking his legs, as if he hadn't heard a man at all. The dolly white-robed Fan King walking in the mud bottle lane turned up his mouth, and the man gained a little unexpected joy. It is worthy of being the seed of our old Song family. However, the thought that the young man was still the woman, as son and the powerful vassal king of Dolly's first martial arts master, also felt a little upset, and thorny thought as soon as Song Jixin gritted his teeth. He turned back and said to Jigui standing at the door of the house, "I'll go back. Don't worry about me for lunch." As soon as Song Jixin walked out of the courtyard, he turned and said with a smile, "Take the pocket of silver at the head of my bed and go to Du's shop to buy the pair of dragon and phoenix incense pendants. Anyway, we don't have to save money in the future." Jigui nodded and made a careful sign. Song Jixin smiled happily and left smartly. When Song Jixin walked away, Liu Xiaonyang, sitting on the wall, carefully asked, "Jigui, what is the relationship between Song Jixin and the supervisor?" Jigui looked at the tall boy with pity. Liu Xiaonyang couldn't stand her sight. "What are you doing? You just know an official who is in charge of porcelain firing. It's amazing." Jigui pulled the corners of her mouth, went back to the house to get food, and began to feed the elderly hen and the fluffy chicks. Liu Xiaonyang felt frustrated for no reason. He jumped down from the wall and shouted to the house, "Chen, let's go to the blacksmith shop. We can't stand this cowardice." The girl turned her back to the neighbor's yard separated by a wall and said with a smile, "Buddha fights for an incense stick and people fight for one breath. Unfortunately, there is only one belly of cowardly chai." Liu Xiaonyang's blood surged up, and even his ears were red. He went to the yellow mud wall and hit the wall heavily. "Wang Zhu, say it again if you have the ability." The maid threw away all the corn and vegetable leaves, clapped her hands, turned her head and said with a smile, "Who do you think you are? Let me say it." Liu Xiaonyang looked at the girl, who was drawing a strip and becoming more and more beautiful. She couldn't speak. Her heart was empty, just like a porcelain bowl in her heart, and fell to the ground. In fact, Chen Ping'an had already stood at the threshold. Seeing this behind the scenes, he quickly walked to the yard and whispered, "Let's go." The two teenagers walked side by side in the alley. The tall boy suddenly asked, "Chen Ping'an, am I very promising?" Chen Ping'an thought for a moment and said seriously, "The neighbors in the alley say my mother is very good, and they say my father is a famous muggle. So I don't think it has much to do with who I like or not." Liu Xiaonyang cried. "That's even worse for me. Even if she works hard to build a dragon kill or learns Master Ruan skills, doesn't she also dislike me?" Chen Ping'an shut up wisely to avoid adding fuel to the fire. Walking in a familiar alley, Chen Ping'an suddenly remembered a scene that in his early years. He followed old man Yang into the mountains along the stream. He saw a little elk drinking water by the water dot. He was not afraid to see him dot after drinking the water. He looked down at the stream and didn't leave for a long time. In addition to the reflection of elk, there was a wandering fish in the water. Before leaving the ancestral home, Miss Ning suggested that since he had a piece of local slave, he should leave the town early. With the invisible shelter of the local slave, he would not have too much accident. That it's best not to stay in the town for too long, because she didn't know whether Liu Xiaoyan would bring harm to Chen Ping'an. However, Chen Ping'an insisted on seeing Liu Xiaoyan accepted as an apprentice by Master Ruan before he could leave at ease. Because there was no Liu Xiaoyan, he would have starved to death. Of course, Chen Ping'an also hoped that the girl Ning would recover from her injury at his home, but the teenager didn't dare to say it at that time for fear that she would think it was frivolous. Chen Ping'an suddenly asked, "Will you never sell the treasure armor your grandfather left you to outsiders?" Liu Xiaoyan said with a natural face, "Nonsense. Of course. Death doesn't sell." He punched the boy on the shoulder and joked, "I'm not a financial fan like you." The tall boy hugged the back of his head with both hands. Some things are not available for the time being and can be earned with money, but some things are gone, and they will really be gone in this life, Chen Ping'an said to himself. "I see." When Liu Xiaoyan broke a foul word, when he was about to get to the entrance of the mud bottle lane, Chen Ping'an put away his thoughts and looked up. Suddenly, he was a little heavy-hearted. It's Liu Jian, the junior of the Liu family in Fulu Street. He was the one who blocked Liu Xiaoyan in this alley with a group of evil friends and dogs, and almost killed him. If Chen Ping'an had run to shout those voices, Liu Xiaoyan, who has no elder relatives at home, might have been thrown to the random burial post. Song Jixin squatted on the wall to watch the excitement, and kept blowing ways to help the Lian. Later, he told Chen Ping'an that Liu Jianchun's behavior was called acting as a CFO outside the town. Liu Jianchun stopped Liu Xiaoyan's way, squeezed out a smiling face and said, "Don't be nervous. I'm not here to settle old accounts with you today, but ... Liu Xiaoyan interrupted the Liu family child's words. "Come back. A good dog doesn't block the way. Get up to me." Liu Jianchun looked embarrassed and said with a full smile, "Liu Xiaoyan, I really have something to discuss with you this time. Last time, you ran away without waiting for us to finish talking. It's no good. You should listen to the conditions given by me. Right? Really? We two brothers don't know each other. There's no need to be so stiff. Those guests and I are very sincere." Liu Xiaoyan tilted his head and said sarcastically, "Why? Are you addicted to matchmaking? I'm surprised. You say that Liu Jianchun is at least the grandson of the richest family in our town. Why do you like to be a dogleg for outsiders?" Liu Jianchun's face was livid, but he still wanted to keep the smile on his face. The whole person looked very funny and almost begged, "Liu Xiaoyan, as long as you ask for anything, they will try their best to satisfy you, such as copper money. Otherwise, how about you say a number? For example, 150 yuan. That single quote says ... 200 yuan. I can also make a counteroffer for you. 200 yuan can let you buy half a house in Fulu Street." Liu Xiaoyan stared at the man's eyes and face in front of him and said contemptuously, 200 guan. You send beggars. Are you sincere? I advise you not to be stupid with me. I have to be busy with business. Go away. At the corner outside the mud bottle lane, a small female doll carved with powder and jade rolled on the shoulders of the burly old man. The boy in a red robe was held by the woman. He was supposed to be innocent and had a sinister look on his face that was inconsistent with his age. He said in the words of his hometown, "Is this Liu family too stupid? What's the use? The woman shook her head and said with a soft smile, "If you want to be kind to others, you should know how to fight me, promote me hatred and talk about business. If you want to make the most profit, you should first test the bottom line of each other's psychological price like Liu Jianchun." The child wondered, "It needs so much trouble to do business with these natives and dullards." The woman said with a smile, "Human nature is complex and people's hearts are dark. People in small places are not all fools, even if they have short knowledge. If you think so, you will lose sooner or later." The child said, "My mother is familiar with people's hearts. Why don't you come forward and talk directly?" The woman patiently explained. The child shook his head and broke away from the woman's hands. He had no good way. "I'm tired of this empty truth again. The woman was a little helpless, but she didn't continue to teach the truth. She only felt that her children had good talent and bones and had two family names as their beggars. Therefore, the road ahead was still very long. Although her temperament was a little paranoid and gloomy, she could simmer slowly and pull out the seedlings to help. Listening to the boring dialogue in the alley, the girl was a little sad. Grandpa White Ape, if that man is unwilling to sell things, what shall we do? The old man, whose hands reached his knees like an ape, smiled. Let him die. The old slave came here to deal with the worst situation. Otherwise, the money would be lost and there would be no sound. However, there will be some trouble for the young lady's safety at that time. It is estimated that he will have to entrust it to the Song family or the Li family. Apart from others, if you kill someone, although the old man will be expelled by the saints, it is better to throw a stone into the water than to float silently. However, the old man would never make such a bad decision unless he had to. After all, the Sword Sutra is of great significance and Jian Mountain is regarded as a treasure. It is far inferior to the young lady's longevity avenue on its shoulder. At least for the old man, the town has 4 surnames and 10 nationalities, led by Lu. But if you put it outside, on the contrary, it is actually Lu's bottom dog. It comes from a dynasty ruled by Lu's main branch, after it was destroyed by the joint efforts of the 2 Dali border forces. Lu's position in Dongbao Pingshu is in jeopardy. On the other side of the alley, Liu Xiaoyang listened to what Lu Zhengchun said about high-ranking officials, rich people and beautiful women. It was like facing a Song Jixen who lost his bookcase. He was particularly angry. He stepped forward and pointed to Lu Zhengchun's nose to cut the railway. That armor belongs to my Liu family. It has nothing to do with money. Even if you let me move to your house today, I won't bother to talk to you if Lu Zhengchun calls me grandpa every day from now on. Lu, do you understand? Standing alone at the mouth of the mud bottle lane, Lu Zhengchun stared at the bastard in front of him. He made it clear that barefoot people are not afraid of wearing shoes. Most of the Lu family have a heart to kill here. Before, I was a lobbyist on the corridor bridge, blocking Liu Xiaoyang's way to the blacksmith shop. As a result, I had a bad start. I returned to the house on Fulu Street. Grandpa entertained those high-ranking guests and shot at him to the secret room without saying anything cruel or big about any family business. He just pointed to the body under the white cloth. Zhengchun, Grandpa has no other requirements. He just hopes not to let your brother die in peace. He hopes that on the first 7 days, you will have gone out of the town and take a look at the scenery outside for him. Lu Zhengchun suddenly wet his eyes, choked and trembled and said, Liu Xiaoyang, I beg you. Okay. Liu Xiaoyang was stunned. The well-dressed young man became more and more vulnerable and helpless. His lips trembled and he couldn't cry. You okay? I'll kneel down for you and I'll admit my mistake. Okay. I plopped out Lu Zhengchun down firmly on the mud floor of the mud bottle lane and began to kowtow. The man has gold under his knee. The young man called out unambiguously and banged out at the foot of the outer wall of the mud bottle lane. The little girl kicked the old man gently on the chest, thinking about which eye-catching peak she made all the way, and which one to move back to her hometown. The boy gloated and asked casually, Mom, is this little crazy? Do we really want to leave the town with a madman in the future? What a shame. The woman looked complex. She thought of many strange people and things she had witnessed with her own eyes. She wanted to talk and stopped. Finally, she shook her head and said, None. Liu Xiaoyang was at a loss. The tall boy broke his head and didn't expect Lu Zhengchun to act like this. The eldest grandson of the richest portal in the town just knelt at his feet and cowed down. Liu Xiaoyang's face was tangled. At this time, he had been observing Liu Xiaoyang and Lu Zhengchun's straw sandal youth. He suddenly pulled his sleeve and shook his head gently. Liu Xiaoyang couldn't bear to say, It's too outrageous. Double quotes. Chen and S eyes are firm and self-evident. The careless tall boy has shown signs of weakness, but in the eyes of the girl in black, the straw sandal boy who was a bad man seems to be extremely hard-hearted at the moment. Chen Ping'an's intuition told him that if Liu Xiaoyang agreed to the deal before Lu Zhengchun knelt down, he might have suffered the most. but his life was safe. But now Liu Xiaoyan had fallen into the dilemma he had encountered before at that time. If Mr. Dao Che had not intervened, his fate would be to kill Fu Nanyue and then be killed. Either the people of Xianxia Mountain or Lao Longkang. What's more fatal is that according to the rules told him by Missing, if Liu Zhenchun himself is from a small town, he or the Liu family will kill Liu Xiaoyan, and Mr. Dao Che is likely to be out of control. Chen Ping and his mind turned. While Liu Zhenchun was still cowering desperately, he lowered his voice and said to Liu Xiaoyan, "If you can't, just pretend to promise him. Let's see Master ruin first and wait until you are accepted as an apprentice." Liu Xiaoyan nodded and said to Liu Zhenchun, "Man, you'd better get up first and talk. What kind of business is it when you're so fucking niche?" Liu Zhenchun didn't get up. He looked up, his swollen forehead covered with soil. Liu Xiaoyan said reluctantly, "Would you need to go back first? Sum it up with them and discuss a fair price. Don't fool me anymore. I'm not a fool. What 200 copper coins? Not to mention whether I will lose to Grandma's house. But just say that those noble people don't mind falling prices." Liu Zhenchun got up slowly and said with a smile, "That's the reason. As long as you are willing to let go, Liu Xiaoyan, I, Liu Zhenchun, will be your brother in the future. It doesn't matter whether you recognize me or not. Anyway, I recognize you." Liu Xiaoyan walked over, hooked up with Liu Zhenchun, walked to the alley and comforted Lao Lu, "I'll take my brother to enjoy happiness in the future. When the deal is concluded, I should buy you a good drink." While wiping his forehead, Liu Zhenchun said with a happy smile, "Drinking is not easy. What's difficult? And I'll invite you though it won't cost you. Let's make a deal. Otherwise, I'll be angry." Liu Xiaoyan laughed and said, "I know Lao Lu. You're a kind man. It's right to mix with you in the future." Chen Ping followed them, slightly leaning to the side of the alley wall and staring at the movement at the entrance of the alley. The white-robed man took the young Song Jixon and rushed to the back hall of the governor's office at the old leader's box. The steward said that Mr. Dudley, who had come all the way to the academy, had waited here for less than half an hour and said that he would leave for the school to visit the Confucian elder. Song Changjing didn't say a word about it, but asked, "Did you find out which force's chess piece was the assassin who died in the alley?" The steward hesitated. Song Changjing frowned and said, "HMM." The old man quickly bent down and said in fear, "It's the Song family in Fuli Street." Song Changjing sneered and said, "I don't know. Give me a little surprise." Old and sweaty, Song Jixon was silent and his eyes were hard out in the school. Che Jingchen gently put down his books and looked around. At the door stood a handsome young man with a high hat and a Confucian shirt. Smiling but silent, Che Jingchen's face was calm and unsmiling. In the small town, a bald man in strange clothes walked barefoot and looked haggard. He came to the iron log well, looked at the deep well, folded his hands, closed his eyes and whispered, "Buddha, a bowl of water, 18,000 insects." Outside the town, on the top of a mountain peak, someone stood on the thick branch of a towering ancient tree, overlooking the outline of the town, hanging a tiger amulet around his waist and carrying a long sword. This side is beyond heaven and earth, on a long road that tilts upward and seems to be open to the sky. There are clouds around and no scenery can be seen. There is a young Taoist named Huang Guan, riding a white deer and climbing slowly. Beside him was another Taoist with a jade face. His steps were light and flowing. There were two big fish with long whiskers, red and green, lingering around him. Confucianism, Buddhism, Taoism and soldiers, a family of 3 religions, were gathered in the town. In the blacksmith shop by the river in the south of the town, father and daughter made iron, and sparks splashed like a gorgeous fire rain. The man held the sword embryo and said to the ponytail girl, who was swinging the hammer, "Don't go to town these days." The strength of the girl's hand immediately weakened, and she felt that her whole strength slipped away with the snacks in the town. The man smiled angrily, promising, turning grief and anger into strength. The girl hit the red sword with a heavy hammer. Under the bright spark, the girl came to the world like a god of fire.